Greetings, dear reader. Time, they say, is the most mysterious force in the universe. It is both fleeting and eternal, an invisible thread that weaves through our lives, shaping our destinies in ways we cannot always comprehend. In the small, forgotten town of Elder, time itself has always been strange. The days drift by, some too short, others stretching endlessly into the night. Here, where the flow of time is more a riddle than a certainty, we meet our protagonist, someone caught between the mundane and the extraordinary. This is the story of Arden, a young person drawn to the heart of Elder's mystery, the great clock tower, a relic of another age. The clock stands as both a guardian of time and a symbol of the town's strange rhythms. Little does Arden know, their fate is intricately tied to this clock, and to the timekeeper who watches over it. So, as the clock ticks, and the sands of time slip through your fingers, take a deep breath and join us on a journey to unravel the secrets of the timekeeper's clock. Chapter 1. The Clock Tower Elder was a town that never seemed to wake fully, and it never seemed to sleep entirely. It existed in a liminal state, caught between moments in time. The sun hovered just above the horizon, casting long, lazy shadows across cobblestone streets that wound like veins through the town. Time itself felt suspended here, trapped in a loop, neither moving forward nor backward. The clock tower, with its towering spires and ancient face, stood as the one constant in a place defined by its mysteries. For Arden, Elder had always been a kind of cage, a place where the world felt too small, too quiet. The town's inhabitants were kind enough, but their conversations, their lives, seemed to run on repeat. People went about their daily routines, visiting the same shops, attending the same markets, and yet no one seemed to notice the oddities around them. It was a place where nothing truly changed, where the passage of time felt more like a suggestion than a certainty. Arden had always felt out of place, like a bird with wings that didn't quite work. They spent much of their time walking the winding streets, eyes cast upward toward the massive clock tower at the center of town. It loomed over Elder, its hands ticking slowly, ever so slowly, as if reluctant to move. The clock was said to be older than the town itself, built by some long-forgotten ancestor who had understood the true importance of time. Or so the stories went. Time is the most powerful force in Elder, people would say, their voices hushed, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile illusion of normality. But Arden had always been curious, and curiosity, they knew, was the one thing the town could never fully suppress. Every evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, they would make their way to the clock tower. No one else seemed to care much for it. The townspeople took the tower's existence for granted, like the air they breathed. But for Arden, it was something more, a mystery. The tower seemed to pulse with an unseen energy, its ancient gears and mechanisms whispering secrets that only a few could hear. One evening, just as the last traces of daylight faded into twilight, Arden found themselves standing before the clock tower, as they had so many times before. But this evening felt different. The wind had picked up, and the air felt charged, like a storm was brewing somewhere, far off, but heading toward them. The clock tower's hands had stopped, not in the usual way, when they would pause for a moment and then resume their steady ticking. No, this was different. The hands were frozen, caught in mid-motion, and no sound came from within. Not the familiar ticking, not the soft hum of time passing. Arden's heart raced as they stepped closer to the base of the tower. The door, which had always been locked, stood slightly ajar. The wind tugged at their coat, urging them inside. They hesitated for only a moment before pushing the door open. Inside, the air was thick with dust, but there was something else, something ancient and heavy, like the weight of ages pressing down on their shoulders. The inside of the clock tower was a labyrinth of gears, cogs, and mechanisms that seemed to stretch endlessly upward. The clock's face loomed above them, its cracked glass staring down like an unblinking eye. And then they heard it. A soft voice, distant but unmistakable, came from somewhere in the shadows. "You've come." Arden froze, their hearts skipping a beat. They couldn't see anyone, but the voice seemed to echo all around them, vibrating in the very air. "You've always been meant to come," the voice continued, this time clearer, as though someone was standing right beside them. "The Timekeeper awaits." Arden turned sharply, looking for the source of the voice. There, in the darkened corner of the room, a figure stood, draped in a cloak of midnight blue. Their face was hidden, but their presence was undeniable. The figure raised a hand, motioning for Arden to approach. "You are the one," the Timekeeper said, their voice a soft, almost melodic whisper. "The one who will mend what has been broken." The words were like a jolt of electricity to Arden's mind. They had heard the stories, of course, about the Timekeeper, the mysterious figure who lived within the tower and tended to the ancient clock. But no one had ever seen the Timekeeper, and no one had ever dared to approach the tower after dark. "Why me?" Arden asked, their voice trembling slightly despite their best efforts to remain composed. "Because," the Timekeeper replied, stepping forward into the dim light, "you are the only one who can fix what has been lost." Arden's breath caught in their throat. The clock, they now realized, was not just a town relic. It was something much more, something far more important. "Why now?" Arden pressed, taking a cautious step forward. "What's happening?" The Timekeeper's eyes, glowing faintly beneath their hood, met Arden's with a knowing gaze. "Time is breaking, Arden, and it needs you to mend it." Arden felt a chill race down their spine. They had always felt something was off about Elder, but this was something else entirely. "How?" Arden asked, barely able to find their voice. The Timekeeper smiled faintly, a sad but knowing smile. "Follow the path, and you'll find your answers. But be warned, time itself will test you, and not all things should be undone." The figure vanished as quickly as they had appeared, leaving Arden standing alone in the cold, silent tower. The clock's hands remained frozen, and the weight of the world, or at least of time, seemed to rest on Arden's shoulders. But it was no longer just curiosity that drove them. It was something deeper, something inevitable. Arden had come for answers, but now they understood. They were caught in something far bigger than themselves. The clock, the Timekeeper, and the mysteries of time were all part of a puzzle, one that only Arden could solve. And so Arden stepped forward, toward the heart of the tower, toward whatever waited in the shadows of time. Chapter 2. The Timekeeper's secret. The door to the clock tower closed behind Arden with a heavy thud, sealing them inside. For a moment, the silence was all-encompassing, broken only by the faint creak of the ancient wood beneath their feet. The air felt thick and strange, as though time itself had frozen in place, suffocating the very breath from the room. Arden could still feel the lingering presence of the Timekeeper, as if the figure's voice was etched into the very walls of the tower. They took a cautious step forward, their gaze flicking from the massive gears overhead to the floor beneath their feet, where pieces of ancient machinery lay scattered like relics of a forgotten age. The room was vast, filled with the hum of long-dormant mechanisms that, for the first time in who knows how long, seemed to stir with a faint energy. The ticking of the clock was no longer a comforting rhythm. It had become a deafening silence, as though the heart of the tower had skipped a beat. A dim light emanated from the far corner, where the timekeeper had disappeared. It was not a natural light, but one that seemed to pulse, alive with an inner glow. Arden moved toward it instinctively, their heart racing with a mixture of fear and fascination. As they approached, the shadows seemed to bend around them, the room shifting ever so slightly as if the walls were alive, responding to their presence. At the center of the room, beneath the glowing light, stood a pedestal, a simple stone structure with intricate carvings etched into its surface. On top of the pedestal lay a small silver key, its surface gleaming in the dim light. Arden reached out without thinking, their fingers brushing the cool metal. The moment their hand made contact, a surge of energy coursed through them. The key pulsed with an odd warmth, and a soft hum resonated in the air. The light in the room brightened, and the gears above them groaned to life, slowly turning in sync with the pulse of the key. Before they could react, a voice spoke again, but this time it was clearer, louder, almost tangible. "You've taken the first step." Arden spun around, their heart pounding. The timekeeper had reappeared, standing in the same corner where they had been moments before. But now the figure seemed different, less like a shadow and more like a living, breathing entity, though still shrouded in that dark, flowing cloak. The glow in their eyes was brighter now, sharper, and they seemed more real than before. Their presence filled the room, like an ancient power awakening from a long slumber. "You have questions," the timekeeper said, their voice soft but commanding, as if the very words carried the weight of centuries. "And you deserve answers. But know this, once you step further into this world, there is no turning back." Arden opened their mouth to speak, but the words caught in their throat. They had so many questions, but at that moment, one stood above all others. "Who are you?" Arden asked, their voice hoarse. "And what is this place?" The timekeeper's smile was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it carried a sadness, a weight of lost time. "I am the timekeeper," they began, their voice distant, like a memory. "I have been entrusted with the care of the clock tower for as long as time itself has been measured in elder. My purpose is simple yet profound, to ensure that time flows as it should. But, as you've seen, the clock is broken, and time has begun to unravel." Arden frowned, their mind racing. "But why me? Why did you say I'm the one who can fix it?" The timekeeper's gaze softened, and for the first time, they stepped forward, the movement fluid, like water flowing through cracks in stone. "You are not just anyone," they replied. "You are a child of time, born from the very essence that keeps this world moving. You are part of the clock, as much as I am, as much as the gears that turn above us. When time was created, you were created along with it, woven into the fabric of its existence." Arden blinked, trying to comprehend what the timekeeper had just said. "But I'm just a person. I live here, in Elder. I have no special power." "Ah," the timekeeper said, their voice like a soft whisper of wind. "You may not know it yet, but you carry the key to time itself. The clock's broken pieces, the moments that have been lost, They are all bound to you. You have the ability to restore the flow of time, to heal the fractures that threaten to tear this world apart. But how? How do I do that? Arden asked, their confusion growing with each passing second. The timekeeper paused, as though considering how to explain the unexplainable. It is not about power, not in the way you think. It is about understanding. Understanding the delicate balance between moments, between the past, the present, and the future. Time is not a straight line, as most believe. It is a web, a vast, intricate pattern, where each choice, each moment, influences the next. The clock, like the web of time itself, is fragile, and if you can repair it, if you can find the missing pieces, you will restore the balance. Arden felt a chill creep down their spine. The weight of the words settled on them, heavy and suffocating. They had thought they had come here simply to satisfy their curiosity, to understand the mystery of the clock tower. But now it seemed that their purpose was far greater than they could have ever imagined. "Where do I start?" Arden asked, their voice barely above a whisper. The timekeeper nodded, and with a gesture, they pointed toward the far side of the room, where a massive gear stood, pulsing with faint energy. "That is the heart of the clock," the timekeeper said, "the mechanism that holds time together. But it is broken, and it cannot be repaired alone. There are pieces scattered throughout the world, hidden within the folds of time itself. You must find them, one by one, and bring them back." Arden's heart skipped a beat. "And how do I find them?" "That is for you to discover," the timekeeper replied, their eyes glinting with an unreadable expression. "But be warned, time is a dangerous thing. There are those who would seek to destroy it, to break the balance, to reshape it in their own image. They will stop at nothing to see that you fail." A shadow crossed the timekeeper's face, and for a moment, Arden saw something like fear flicker in their eyes. It was gone as quickly as it had appeared, but it was enough to make Arden's heart race. "You must be careful," the timekeeper said, their tone more urgent now. "There is another, someone who seeks to undo all that we have built. They are known as the Timebreaker, and their power is as ancient as mine. They seek to break the clock, to shatter time itself." The mention of the Timebreaker sent a shiver down Arden's spine. "How can I stop them?" "You cannot stop them with force," the timekeeper replied. "You must outwit them, outlast them, and most of all, you must understand time better than anyone has before." Arden nodded slowly, the weight of the task ahead pressing down on them. They had never asked for this. They had never asked for a role in a battle for the very fabric of time itself. But here they were, standing in the heart of the clock tower, with the fate of the world hanging on their shoulders. As the timekeeper stepped back into the shadows, their form blending with the darkness once more, they left Arden with one final warning. Time waits for no one, but if you repair the clock, if you restore the balance, you may just have the chance to save us all. Arden stood alone in the vast room, the hum of the gears above their head growing louder, resonating through the floor beneath their feet. They could feel the pulse of the clock, its ancient rhythm, echoing in their chest. The journey had just begun, and Arden had no choice but to follow the path ahead, wherever it might lead. Chapter 3. The first piece the air in the clock tower felt different now. There was a weight to it, as if time itself had gathered in the room, watching, waiting. Arden stood motionless beneath the towering gears, feeling the hum of ancient machinery reverberating through the floor beneath their feet. The timekeeper's words echoed in their mind, urging them to understand time, to restore the broken clock, and to find the missing pieces scattered through the web of moments. But how? How could they, a simple young person from a quiet town, fix something so vast, so complex? The timekeeper had said there was no turning back, that they had been chosen. Chosen for what? To repair time itself? The weight of it all was suffocating. Arden's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden shift in the atmosphere. The once still room seemed to pulse with energy, as though the clock tower itself had begun to awaken. A soft, melodic chime rang out, not from the clock itself, but from a distant part of the tower, deep within its heart. The sound was strange, ancient, and yet somehow familiar. For a moment, Arden hesitated, unsure of what to do next. The timekeeper had mentioned pieces, fragments of the clock, fragments of time, scattered throughout the world. How were they supposed to find them? How could they even know what they were looking for? Time is a web, the timekeeper had said, a pattern that connects all moments, past, present, and future. You must understand it. But where to start? Arden's mind raced, seeking any clue, any hint of how they could possibly begin this monumental task. Then, the hum of the clock shifted again. A soft, vibrating pulse seemed to ripple through the air, pulling Arden's attention to the pedestal where the silver key had once lain. The key was no longer there, but in its place was a small, glowing orb. It was no larger than a marble, and yet it radiated an intense, almost hypnotic light. Arden stepped closer, drawn by its pull, the strange energy tingling through their fingertips as they reached out to touch it. The moment their hand made contact with the orb, the room around them seemed to shift. The air thickened, and the world felt as though it was slipping away from their grasp. The gears above them spun faster, a cacophony of whirring metal and creaking wood filling the space. But it wasn't just the clock that was moving, it was the world itself. Arden's surroundings began to blur, the stone walls of the tower distorting, as though they were being pulled into a vortex of shifting timelines. Suddenly, the room snapped back into focus, and Arden found themselves standing in a different place entirely. The clock tower had vanished, replaced by an unfamiliar landscape. They stood on a vast stretch of land, beneath a sky that was both strange and familiar. The air was thick with the scent of earth and metal, and the ground beneath their feet was rocky, uneven. Arden's breath caught in their throat. This wasn't Elder. In fact, it wasn't anywhere they had ever seen before. The distant sound of clanging metal reached their ears, followed by a low rumble. That vibrated through the ground. Arden turned, eyes wide, and saw a figure standing in the distance. It was a person, dressed in a tattered cloak, their back hunched as they bent over something on the ground. They were working, carving, shaping. The figure turned slowly at the sound of Arden's approach. Their face was hidden beneath the hood of their cloak, but there was something about them that felt familiar. "Who are you?" Arden called out, unsure if the figure could even hear them. The figure did not answer immediately. Instead, they stood up, revealing a strange, intricate device in their hands, a device made of cogs and gears, unlike anything Arden had ever seen. It was small, but its purpose seemed clear. The figure held it carefully, almost reverently, before raising their head to meet Arden's gaze. "I could ask you the same question," the figure replied, their voice gravelly but calm. "But I know what you are, just as I know what you are seeking." Arden felt their pulse quicken. You know why I'm here?" The figure nodded. "I know because I've been waiting for you." Arden's mind raced. "Waiting for me? But how? I don't even know who you are. What is this place? And what do you have to do with the clock?" The figure chuckled softly, a sound like the rustling of leaves. "You are standing on the edge of a timeline, a place where the threads of history converge. This is a moment outside of time, where the past and future meet. As for who I am someone who understands the nature of time and its pieces. I am one of the keepers." Arden frowned. "One of the keepers? Like the Timekeeper?" The figure's eyes glinted beneath their hood. "In a way, yes, but not the same. I am a keeper of moments, a protector of the fragments of time that have been lost, scattered, or stolen." Arden's confusion only deepened. "What do you mean by fragments of time?" The keeper extended the device toward Arden. "This," they said, "is a piece of the clock, a fragment of time that has been separated from the whole. When time fractures, when it breaks, pieces like this one are scattered. It is the job of the keepers to protect them, to ensure that the balance of time is maintained." Arden's eyes widened as they looked at the device in the keeper's hands. It was a small, mechanical object, but its surface was covered in intricate engravings, symbols they didn't recognize, but felt drawn to nonetheless. Is this one of the pieces I need to restore the clock?" The keeper nodded. "Yes, but not all pieces are as simple to find. Time is not a straight path, and not all moments can be recovered easily. This is only the first fragment, and already you are on the path toward danger." "Danger?" Arden repeated, their heart beginning to race. "What kind of danger?" The keeper's eyes flickered with a hint of something darker. "There are others who seek these pieces, those who would twist time to their will, who wish to break the clock beyond repair. They will stop at nothing to take what you have, to ensure that time remains shattered." Arden felt a knot tighten in their chest. "Who are they?" The keeper hesitated, as though choosing their words carefully. "They are the ones who seek to unmake time itself. They are known as the time breakers, and they will stop at nothing to see that time is broken, that the clock remains in pieces, never to be whole again." The words sent a shiver down Arden's spine. The time breakers. Who were they, and why would they want to destroy time? What kind of world would be left if the clock was broken beyond repair? "You must take this fragment," the keeper said, offering the device to Arden. "But you must be careful. The journey ahead will not be easy, and the pieces you seek are scattered across time itself. Each one is hidden, and each one comes with its own dangers. But if you are to repair the clock, you must find them all." Arden reached out and took the device, feeling its strange warmth in their hand. It was lighter than it seemed, yet its weight was immense, as though it carried the burden of all the time that had been lost. "How will I find the other pieces?" Arden asked, still trying to wrap their mind around everything that had just been revealed to them. The keeper gave a faint smile, their expression softening. "That is something you will learn in time. Follow the threads of the web, and you will find your way. But remember, time is not what it seems. It will bend, It will twist, and it will test you. Do not let the pieces slip through your fingers." Arden nodded, their minds spinning with everything they had learned. They didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing was clear. They were no longer just a curious observer. They were part of something much larger, something that stretched across the very fabric of time. And with the first piece in their hand, they had already taken the first step.